Business Focus with Kudzi Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.
Good morning and welcome to Business Focus right here on Capital. Proudly brought to you by POSB. So there's a lot of stories that are making headlines in the business world this week. And of course, coming to the end of the week, the Business Weekly is out today. We will be checking out a couple of stories that are making headlines in the Business Weekly today on Business Focus. Proudly brought to you by POSB right here on Capital. Let's get to take a look on the stories that are making headlines in the Business Weekly that is out, and you can also get to check it out online on www.businessweekly.co.zw, and you'll be able to check out those stories that are making headlines. And this one is the story that's making headlines today, the Business Weekly. Before we get to discuss more with Kudzi Sharara in a moment, Zim takes a dragnet fails to capture informal sector. That is one story by Martin Kadzere of the Business Weekly, who says that Zimbabwe's efforts to harness tax from the informal sector may be encountering significant challenges after the Treasury managed to collect a mere 3% of its target during the first 8 months of the year, according to government financials for the month ended August. An informal economy, that is the informal sector or shadow economy, is the part of any economy that is neither taxed or nor monitored by government. The government introduced a presumptive tax, a fixed rate levied on informal businesses that do not maintain proper financial records when transacting. That is part of the story that is making headlines in the Business Weekly today. Zim tax dragnet fails to capture informal sector. Other stories also making headlines in this week's edition of the Business Weekly. Zim's investment values plummet 66% according to Zida. So the story by Oliver Kazunga of the Business Weekly reports that Zimbabwe's projected value of investments are slumped by 66% to $1.171 billion in the third quarter this year, from $3.408 billion prior a year comparative, according to official data, with economic observers arguing the knock was a result of economic uncertainty in local and global economic trends. The Zimbabwe Investment and Development Agency, ZIDA, in its quarterly report for the third quarter ended September 30, 2024, said in the period under review there was also a 7% decrease to 168 in the number of investment applications issued. In the corresponding period in 2023, ZIDA issued a total of 180 new investment applications. So that's one story that is also making headlines in this week's edition of the Business Weekly. Zim's investment values plummet 66% according to ZIDA. We take a break. When we come back, we continue with some more stories that are making headlines in this week's edition of the Business Weekly. Visit any PESM furniture branch for all your modern high-quality furniture and electrical appliances. PESM, we do beds, lounge suites, TVs, kitchen units, fridges, stoves, and a lot more at unbeatable prices throughout Zimbabwe. PESM Furniture is in Chivu, Masvingo, the CBD, in Zvishavane, Nyika, Jerera, Gutu, Chiredzi, Checheche. PESM Furniture pa Wedza, Murewa, Gokwe, Kadoma, Chegutu, Vlayo, Kariba, Nyanga, Mutare, Ndanga Mvura. Harare. PESM Furniture is at number 4229 Jabavu Drive, Highfield, Machipisa. 4229 Jabavu Drive, Highfield, Machipisa, and in Waterfalls at Chicken Inn Complex, Pazindoga. Feel free to get in touch with PESM Furniture on 0776 582 860 or 0776 582 860. PESM, modern furniture for modern people. Let's go back onto the stories that are making headlines in this week's edition of the Business Weekly. There's a story that reads, RBZ holds inflation projections as steady, but analysts defy. The story reads, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe has come under scrutiny over its inflation projections, with Apex Bank insisting the monthly inflation rate, which soared to 37.2% in October from 5.8% the previous month, will soon cool down. This comes after the central bank last month devalued the domestic currency by about 43%, adding inflationary pressures to prices. But the central bank expects monthly inflation to close the year around its original forecast of 5%. So these are some of the stories that are making headlines in this week's edition of the Business Weekly. We will discuss briefly some of them with Kudzi Sharara. Kudzi, you heard some of the stories that are making heads in this week's edition of the Business Weekly. What's your take on the big story? Zim tax dragnet fails to capture informal sector.
Thank you, Tinashe. So when they say the tax dragnet, okay, so they are saying that Zimra, which has got the mandate to collect taxes on behalf of government.
Yeah.
There is a target that was there from government to say from the informal sector, we are supposed to collect so much. So there was a target. However, they've only managed to collect 3%. 3% of what they were expecting.
Yeah.
They've only managed to collect 3%. Which means that they missed the target by a wide margin, 90%, 97% off target. So that's a big concern, a huge concern for anyone, whether you're in government or not. For any Zimbabwean, that's a huge concern. Why should that be a concern to us as Zimbabweans? Remember that the Zimbabwean economy is said to be anyway above 70% informalized, right? And the minister, I know several times he has come up with tax measures so that we can include the informal sector in the so-called tax dragnet. But what it seems like those tax measures are failing to get the informal sector to contribute to the fiscus. And that's a big concern. It means that whatever revenue that government is collecting is not enough. I've said it before here that our national budget has always been between 4 billion and 5 billion. It has not grown from that over the years. Since 2010 dollarization up to now, our national budget is roughly between 4 and 5 billion, and which means that how does government come out with the budget? Because they are also looking at how much they're expecting to collect. Remember, the ideal situation is to have a budget deficit of about 1.5%, which means that when we say when government says we are going to spend $5 billion, they're expecting to collect close to $5 billion as well, minus 1.5%. They should be able to collect that.
Or even collect more.
Yes. So what this statistics is saying is that the informal sector is almost not contributing anything to the fiscus. And it's a huge concern. Why? Because it's not like the informal sector operates in a vacuum. The informal sector operates where there is need for infrastructure, like roads, like utilities, power utility, water reticulation, sewer reticulation, and many other key infrastructure where it should operate. The informal sector employ, according to some statistics from the IMF, it employs more than 5 million people. And these people, they need facilities like hospitals, schools, and the like that the government is supposed to provide. And if they are not contributing, it means there is a gap now, a funding gap for government to make sure that we have got these facilities and infrastructure. Yes, we cannot deny it that there is some spending by government that we feel as citizens, these guys, they are spending too much on luxury vehicles and the like. But still, it's and obviously you would say they should lead by example. They should be accountability in terms of their spending. There should be transparency in terms of of government spending. However, you can still say that it's not enough that is being collected. So for me, that story is huge.
There's one story as well in today's paper: power challenges choke key sector of economy. Nelson Gahadza reports that the mining industry says it is losing up to 10% of potential output due to power outages, while manufacturers say it is just yet another squeeze on margins.
Yeah, obviously. If you are going to be using ZESA, maybe you are using maybe between around 14 to 16 cents per kilowatt. But if you are using a generator, it's way above that. And there are some industries. We were having the quiz competition in Borodale, and they don't expect ZESA to come. And the facilities that we were using last week in the semi-finals of the quiz competition, their generator had pegged, so they didn't have a generator, and they're saying you have to look for alternative power because ZESA doesn't come at all. So this is Borodale, so they use the generator throughout the day. So imagine the cost of doing business is very high.
It becomes high.
It becomes very high, and then at the end of the day, you are paying more, and your margins will get squeezed because not all costs can be passed on to the consumer, because the consumer so the margins will be squeezed. So it's a true story by Nelson Gahadza. The mining industry as well. Imagine they need a lot of power. They are heavy users of power. That's why we are seeing some of them. They are investing in solar. The other time we were talking about Caledonia Mine, the owners of Blanket Mine, that put up their power, solar power, and just this week, Zimplus also announced that they had completed their 35 megawatt power plant. So these are companies. I called a friend in Borodale. He works at First Mutual Life Holdings, and I said because I wanted to find out the power situation, because it's just next to where we were having the quiz competition. I said, what's the power situation? Do you normally get that? No, I wouldn't know, because we are now on solar 100%. So you see, institutions are now being forced to invest in solar energy at institutional level. So like power situation, it will eat on your margins, and there are some processes that you can't even use solar power, I guess. You need heavy. That's why they end up investing in generators.
You spoke about you were in Borodale yesterday about doing the capital markets finals, the quiz.
Yes.
How did they come out?
Yeah, so the remember the schools that were in the final, Nyanga Marist, Nyanga High School, Marist Brothers, from Manicaland, and then there was Midlands Christian College, and then there was Chinoy High, and then there was Monashe High School from Mutoko. So for those from Mutoko, you can celebrate.
Wow.
Because Monashe High School emerged as the winner of the 2024 Capital Markets High School Quiz Competition. And do you know what? Monashe High School was formed 2 years ago. And it seems from what they did with the quiz competition, it seems like they are doing a great job in terms of teaching the students.
So with Monashe High School winning the capital markets quiz, they will proudly say, Patuze Pedu Samira no choa choa.
Yes, and so they walked away with the coveted prize. And then second runner-up was Chinoy High School, and then third was Marist, and then fourth was Midlands Christian College. But for me, all these schools, not only those that made it to the final, but all the learners that participated, they were 120 learners that participated in this competition. And I think they've invested in something that I didn't even know about when I was doing in high school. That's in the capital markets, the financial literacy, financial inclusion, and they have invested in this knowledge, and hopefully they will be able to use it. And they were given some toolkits by the Securities and Exchange Commission to make sure that not only the ones that participated, but they can use them at their schools to expand. And they were also calls to include financial literacy, financial education in schools, starting from the primary level. And the guest of honor, Honorable David Mnangagwa, Deputy Minister of Finance, also pledged to donate, this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Yeah.
Yes, by Robert Kiyosaki. He pledged to donate that book to all students that participated, and I have read that book. It just changes the way you look at money. And I remember I used to host a program here on Cap Talk called Taking Stock, and I would invite CEOs to say, what's your relationship with money? At what point, what's your earliest memory of money? Like for me, I think my earliest memory of money was tichitengesa pamusika. Moms vachinohodha kumbare tichitengesa pamusika, and you make sure you give people the right change and stuff. That was my earliest memory or encounter with money. And then the savings part, where my mother would like make savings, some chikaba, and she managed to buy herself a whole kitchen. I had my room divider, kitchen unit, And for me, I was like, wow, from savings, So I think we need to teach our kids when they are still young. Start saving. Small businesses. I said to my son, he's grade 7, I said, okay, we are in the summer period. So why don't you I'm going to buy you one packet of my packet in my freezer. But I want you I'm going to buy one, but going forward you'll be eating these freezes, but some of them you must be selling them so that you can
be able to order more.
And so
restock yourself.
But during the course of the day, you're eating your freezes, but also selling them. So that it's not up to him to manage. But I'm just trying to say, look, you need an early relationship with money.
True that. True.
So I think it's the competition. I'm happy for the schools that participate.
Yeah, it was a great initiative. We appreciate it. Mazimba Kupa in Greendale is saying that why is government relying so much on revenue from taxes instead of income from parastatals to fund its expenditure?
Yeah, parastatals have been a big drag on the fiscus. Instead of them contributing to the fiscus, to support from Treasury over the years. But most of the parastatals have now been, they are now under Mutapa Investment Fund. So that's, and hopefully Dr. John Mangunjika and his team at Mutapa Investment Funds will be able to turn around these parastatals and so that they will be able to contribute. Imagine our national budget, 2 billion each ngobva from my dividends anengabva kumutapa investment fund. I think that would be fantastic. So they've got a lot of companies that are under Mutapa. Recently they told us that the assets are worth 16 billion that are under the Mutapa Investment Fund. I'm not sure who did the valuation, but 16 billion. And I think with a $16 billion asset base, you can do a lot so that you can also support infrastructure development within the country. So yes, government shouldn't be relying on taxes. And for some of these infrastructure projects, government shouldn't even be taking from the national budget. They have to make like what they've done with the Harare Victoria Falls, Bulawayo Victoria Falls road, where they've bring in private partners that can construct the road and make their money and then hand it over to government. And I think they are doing the same in Mbare.
All right, just briefly, because time is up. Now the rain season is coming. What's the latest development in terms of Mbare?
So Masimba Construction has now been awarded to do the job to rebuild Mbare. That three floors
smart building.
Yes, Masimba Construction, we know the local company, but it's not owned by a Middle Eastern shareholder. It used to be owned by the Zumbani Capital, Yana Canada Malunga, but now it's owned by a Middle Eastern company. So hopefully they've got enough muscle to do the job.
All right, Takudzi, thank you so much for Business Focus for this week. We discuss more next week. Have us a great weekend.
Business Focus with Kudzi Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.